Hi folks, we're going to take a look at page 279, number 23. So it's a Ferris wheel problem, and they give us the equation for the height with respect to time, but we don't know what the phase shift is here. And they ask us to determine the phase shift such that the initial height value, so at time t equals 0, the Ferris wheel is at 7 meters. Okay, so we'll just input for height 7. Okay, and 0 for time. So pi over 15, and here 0 minus d is just going to be negative d, and then plus 12. Okay, so we're left with this trigonometric equation to solve. So let's start by using our traditional methods as far as we can. So 7 minus 12 divided by 10 is equal to sine of, so I'll just rewrite this here as negative pi over 15d. Okay, so sine of negative pi over 15d is going to be equal to negative 5 over 10, so negative 1/2. Now I notice here that in part B they're asking us to find it using another method. So I'm guessing what they're going for is that one way is to solve it by approximation, so using the inverse sine function. The other option being noticing that negative 1/2 refers to a special angle with respect to sine. Okay, so let's do it that way first, and then we'll check using the alternate method. Okay, so we know that sine is equal to a negative number in the third or fourth quadrant, and since this is y over r, we know that it's going to be the special angle that has the smaller y value, so it's going to be our pi over 6 angle. Okay, so either in the third or the fourth quadrant. Okay, so if we think of this angle here, well, that'll be 7 pi over 6. Okay, but there's another piece of information they give us here, is they tell us that the initial position has to be 7 at time 0, but it says that it has to be on its way upward. Okay, so let's take a look at whether this is a reasonable answer, if it'll solve the problem we want. So what I want to do is I want to look at what this function would look like here without the phase shift. Okay, so it's a sine function, so starts at the middle, goes up, down, back up again. Okay, so if I take the first value at which this function is going to be equal to 7, okay, and I translate it to the left, I notice that it's going to be going downwards first. So that's not going to work. Okay, the other option is to keep going and take this value here. So that would work, because if I translate that to the y-axis, it will be going upwards. Okay, but that's a pretty long horizontal translation. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to consider going into the negatives. Is I want to take this point and bring it to the right by some phase shift. Okay, so that means that I'm going for a negative angle. So instead of using this 7 pi over 6, I'm going to use this other transformation here. So I'm going to go negative pi over 6. Okay, and let's see what happens when I take that as my solution. So if, again, when is sine equal to negative 1/2? Well, one of the options is at negative pi over 6. Okay, so that means the input here, which is like my angle, is going to be equal to negative pi over 6. Okay, so now we can solve for d. So the pi's reduce, the negatives reduce, so I'm just left with d being equal to 15 over 6. Okay, now it makes sense that it should be a positive number, because again my phase shift is going to be to the right. Okay, and if I move this function to the right by 15 over 6 units, I'm going to be starting at 7, and I'm going to be going upwards first. Okay, so there's a solution to my problem. Okay, now if I do it via this alternate method of using sine inverse, well, I actually know that that's going to work, because sine inverse, because sine is negative here, will give me this negative angle anyways. But let's just check it here. So we have that negative pi over 15d will be equal to sine inverse of negative 1/2. Okay. So let's do sine inverse of negative 1/2. Okay, which is negative 0.5236. Okay, and so D is going to be equal to, negatives go, so 15 times 0.5236 over 15, over pi. Sorry about that. There we go. And now let's find an estimate for that. So we're going to be multiplying that by, so the negative 15, because we've got to get rid of the negatives, times negative 15, and then divided by pi, which is equal to 2.5. And of course, what is 15 over 6 equal to? Well, just 2.5. Okay, so we get the same answer. But notice here how, yes, I did have more than one answer that would solve the equation, but it was only one of these answers that was going to meet all the conditions of my question, which in this case here was that not only did the initial value have to be 7, the function had to be going upwards at the start. Okay, that's it for this one.